The theme of tonight is hitting rock bottom. When I was writing this, when God was speaking to me, it was right in the middle of quarantine, and I don't know if you guys went through something during quarantine or before. I mean, a couple of things had happened, and then quarantine happened for me. But I just wanted to be real of the situations that a lot of stuff is happening around us, right? This wasn't just Lakeland. It wasn't just Florida. It was the whole world is going through something. And I remember before quarantine telling my husband, I don't know what's going on, but I'm just sad. And it felt, if I could describe it, it felt, I don't know if falling was the right description. I know Shunga is here, and I share a little bit with her because we spend a lot of time together when we work together. And I don't know if sometimes it felt like drowning, and sometimes it felt like slipping, like a slippery slope, and you just keep going down and you don't know what's going on. But whatever it hit me, or whatever we want to call it, it just kept going down, whatever we were going through, right? And all of a sudden we're thrust into, oh, you have to homeschool. And I had a 6-year-old, and I love her with all my heart. She's upstairs. I love her. But I was searching for whomever could homeschool her, and I would do anything. I ended up doing a mural on Danielle's wall. And I think I spent like 60 hours doing that wall. But for some reason, I was going through something. She was going through something. Because she was like, you are not Mrs. Robertson. And she could not get it. She's 6 years old, and I'm telling her, there is pandemic in the whole world. People are getting sick. People are dying. And you're not going back to school. And I remember her sadness and anger and frustration and looking at me. It's like, I need Mrs. Robertson, and you're not my teacher. Flat out just being so angry at me. I am scared of my 6-year-old at that point. And I'm dialing, thank goodness Mrs. Robertson is like a saint. And I'm dialing her number. It's like, could you please FaceTime with me? This is hard. So she's helping me and telling Anisha, this is what's happening, and I'm here, and we're going to have Zoom calls, and I'm going to be reading to you. And then the next call, like 3 days later, is the teacher crying on the phone, asking me to pray for her. And she's like, I hate Zoom. I'm just being honest. I hate this stuff, and I'm not good at technology, and I'm not as good as other teachers. And I was like, you know what, Mrs. Robertson, my daughter doesn't need you to be another teacher. She needs you. And as I'm ministering to her, I realized that I was ministering to myself too. And I ended up praying for the teacher, and I'm thinking, help me, God, to be myself and to go through this, because everybody's going through it. I thought I was asking my own husband for help because he is, when I'm like shaking, he's solid, And I don't know if he goes to you, Justin, but with me, he's solid.
I go to him. He's the same way. He's crying.
When I'm shaking, he's just like super solid, and out of that came this message of hitting rock bottom, and in the middle of it, I said, God, I don't know what's going through, but at one point I will stop falling. Would I, and I will this stop? Would I hit? And in my heart, so many people said, oh man, I hit rock bottom as a bad thing. I wanted to hit rock bottom as stop falling. You know, that was my conversation with God. And hitting rock bottom, for when I searched it, it was more of a statement of, I was from AA, I was driving and I hit rock bottom when I got a DUI, and I was driving under the influence and I lost my family. That's hitting rock bottom. It started that phrase, it became like hitting rock bottom by AA, or hitting rock bottom in the middle of a depression. But with me, hitting rock bottom was to stop falling and hit the rock. And God started speaking to me through the word. And as I move forward, there's going to be a lot of Bible verses of how God was ministering that he was the rock at the bottom, right? And what to do with the rock in the middle of the storm, in the middle of the depression, in the middle of whatever is the struggle that you are going through, because we're not even out of this thing. And sometimes we just need to contemplate the storm, right? Just to get a different perspective and say, okay, I'm going to stop denying that I'm going through something, and I'm just going to look at it, right? And I'm just going to understand that I'm going through it, but I'm not by myself, right? I'm going through the storm, and I might think he's sleeping, but at least he's on the boat with me, right? And when we're going through the storm, and I heard you giggling, it's like sometimes we're like, God, do you even care that I'm going through this? You just don't like me anymore? So hitting rock bottom, and what does it mean to you? I just wanted to hear a couple of quick comments. What does it mean, that phrase? What does it mean to you?
Out of options.
Out of options? Okay. Anybody else? You want to share? You want to share? Yes.
This word came, I was just like saying like defeated.
Defeated? When you feel defeated? Okay. You feel like reading it now, Shrinda? Yeah. Say it out loud. But here. Sit here so they can hear. So, it will be in the recording for the ones that are not here. She's brave. So brave. In the name of Jesus.
My heart's pounding. Okay, I wrote this, I don't know, a couple, like, maybe back when we were all in quarantine, and I was just writing down what the Lord was speaking to me. So I put, it's called Out of Your Desperation Comes Deliverance. So often we meet Jesus when we are in our most desperate moments, when we are at our wits' end, when we feel all hope is lost, when we realize that nothing else can satisfy or no one else can change our situation, when it dawns on us that in all our strength, all our power, all our money, and all our efforts, we have absolutely zero control over a single thing. When we feel so stuck or utterly desperate, and it feels like every breath is taken with the weight of 1,000 bricks on our chest. When there is nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, nowhere to escape, no light at the end of the tunnel, no silver lining in the clouds, no way to be free. When we become desperate deep in our souls for salvation that we didn't know existed for us. That is when we not only meet the Savior, but when we can accept and receive Him. It is in those desperate moments of hitting rock bottom that we are delivered by Him who is our rock.
Amen. Thank you. So that's what we shared on Tuesday, and I wanted her to read it again. As we move through the verses, I didn't want to take too long because I wanted to have time to pray at the end. It says, He reached down from on high and took hold of me. He drew me out of the deep waters. Hitting rock bottom doesn't mean that you have to stay there. And I wanted to the verse that God took me was even though that phrase is used by AA just recently, the original meaning of it was, and I had a picture here. I don't know if I'm gonna mess up the recording, but when I searched, let's see if I can find it. Right here. So the verse that God took me about hitting rock bottom and Him being the rock was Matthew 7:24-27. It says, the Sea of Galilee was served as a natural setting for this parable. It was the parable about building your house on the rock. It says, the sand ringing the lake was rock hard during the hot summer, but a wise builder will dig down as far as 10 feet or 3 meters below the surface sand to the bedrock, knowing that this was the only way to erect a foundation able to withstand the winter rains, which were notoriously torrential and capable of causing disastrous flooding. So hitting the rock bottom actually came from a construction term where they had to dig deep until they hit the rock. So in the sand, when it talks about the contrast between the man that built his house on the sand looked hard enough to build a house. It was actually compacted. So it was hard work. You had to work really hard to dig 10 feet, like as deep as this house or a little bit deeper, to hit the rock and then start building from there. In Puerto Rico, if you build on the mountain, you're building on the rock because it's solid rock. But in this case, you actually had to dig through what looked like it was solid enough. You had to dig deeper than the appearances. You had to dig deeper than what it looked like it was good enough. You had to work hard so your house will stand when the storms came. It says, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against the house. Yet it did not fall, because it had its foundations on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against the house, and it fell with a great crash. When Jesus had finished saying these things, the crowds were amazed at his teachings, because he taught as one who had authority and not as their teachers of the law. One of the things I wanted to point out was that equally for the one who built his house on the sand and the one who built his house on the rock, the storm still came, right? It's just that the storm or the test or however you want to call it, the struggle is not coming to some and coming to and completely avoiding others. It's coming to all of us. It's just a different storm. It's just a different struggle, right? So I love it when we recognize and understand that we are not our struggle, that the struggles that we're going through don't define us. that he who called us is the one who defined us. Amen? So don't put yourself down for because you're going through something or because somebody else is going through something. Because the winds and the floods are going to come for all of us. Don't think you're not going to go through something. So rock bottom is the only foundation in which you can build a solid life. I like that it talks about the sand look strong enough. Like it looked like. I from building in Puerto Rico, my background was in construction. And I actually worked in Puerto Rico, checking before they laid the foundation and checking that the concrete was the right combination for the foundation. But the way we build in Puerto Rico is actually on the rock. So that, to me, it didn't have any, like, I read this and it was like, I really don't get it because everything is rock in Puerto Rico. But I came here in Florida and I'm looking at constructions and foundation. It's like, it's all sand. This is the verse, right? Like, it makes sense. Numbers 24:21 says, your dwelling place is secure and your nest is set in a rock. So it is just a promise, right? That if we are on the rock, which is Christ, right, our nest will be secure. And talking about the rock again, it says Exodus 17:6. It says, I will stand there before you by the rock at Horeb. Strike the rock and water will come out of it for the people to drink. So Moses did this in the sight of the elders of Israel. I like this situation because God spoke of in two different instances about the rock. One time he said, strike the rock, and another time he said to just talk to it, right? And in both instances, one time Moses did what he did before, and water still came out, but it was a disobedience to God. And as we see all these changes and all these things happening, one thing that God was speaking to me through going to these verses is like, we're not going to be doing the same thing that we did before, expecting to get the same results, because God is going to tell us to do a new thing. And I know a lot of people are talking about, it's a new normal. They still got the same result, but Moses didn't make it to the promised land, right? He's like, I told you to speak to the rock instead of striking the rock. A place of refreshment. I go back to the verse where it says, I wish you were hot or cold, because the water that came out of the rock was cold, right? It was refreshing for those that were in the desert. The cold waters were more associated with refreshment. And when it talks about being hot, it was more healing. When the waters they were bathed, that the water came hot. And it came out of a rock also, but those waters were healing. Like where the man was laying down and being healed, they were there because out of those waters, the bath were worms, were hot, right? And when he said, I wish you were cold or hot, he was talking about, I wish you were refreshing or healing. And it's what God wanted us to be, right? But talking about the rock, in this case, he was supposed to strike the rock. In this case, he was supposed to hide in the rock. And this is when Moses was asking him, just show me your glory. And And I love this situation because it's not until recent that I realized if we see something, right? And he's talking about seeing him, right? If you see me, you will die. It was talking about God, right? But when he told him to hide in the rock, and understanding that the rock is Christ, God was ministering to me how if it wasn't because of the rock, I will die, right? When his presence came, just like in the holiest of holies, if it wasn't because I am able to hide in the rock, I will die. I wouldn't survive it. I wouldn't survive the presence of God. But because he's hiding me in him, I can survive, right? It says, then the Lord said, there is a place near me where you may stand on a rock. When my glory passes by, I will put you in a cleft in the rock and cover you with my hand until I have passed by. Then I will remove my hand and you will see my back, but my face must not be seen. And I've never read this verse like understanding that he was the rock. The way I just read it, doing this Bible study, because I was just so grateful. It's like, thank you that in the middle of whatever we're going through, we don't just, when we hit rock bottom, we don't just sit there, right? You are that rock that we can hide in, that we can go through whatever we need to go through and survive it. Speak to the rock. This is the other verse that I was talking about. And then God told Moses, on this time, I want you to speak to it. It says, take the staff and you and your brother Aaron gather the assembly together. Speak to that rock before their eyes and it will pour out its water. You will bring water out of the rock for the community so they and their livestock can drink. And he didn't obey. Did God punish the whole Israel nation for Moses' mistake? They could have died of thirst in the desert. But God still came through. I just, think of all the times that we continue to disobey. We do what our experience tells us we should do, right? We do what we have done in the past instead of doing what God is telling us to do. It reminds me of Peter and said, I've done this. I'm a fisherman. I've done this. I fished all night and I got nothing. And he's telling him to throw the net when it doesn't make sense, which was daylight, close to the shore. And he got a different result, even though he wasn't doing what his experience was telling him. It didn't make sense, right? But he said, in your word, I will do it. So I just wanted to make a little parenthesis here. I mean, it has nothing to do with, I don't know how to turn it off, but somebody's calling. That I don't know who this is for, but if God is telling you to do something different than what your experience is telling you to do, just be obedient and do it, right? It might not make sense. Maybe that's your profession. Maybe that's what you've been doing all your life. Maybe you have done it enough to know what you should do, but God is telling you something that doesn't make sense. Just do it. Deuteronomy 32:4 says, He is the rock. His works are perfect, and all his ways are just. A faithful God who does no wrong, and upright and just is he. Jesus is the main stone rock. This is a prophecy on Psalms 118:22-23. It says, the stone the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. The Lord has done this and is marvelous I just love that word. It's marvelous in our eyes. This was David prophesying about Jesus, but then Jesus himself said it in Matthew 21:42, if you're taking notes. And as I kept looking about Jesus, I found out that sometimes it's not easy to hit the rock, right? Sometimes it's not pleasant either to be there. That if we, to some, it will be a reason of discomfort. To some, it will be a reason to stumble, right? It says, he will be a holy place for both Israel and Judah. He will be a stone that causes people to stumble, and a rock that makes them fall. And for the people of Jerusalem, he will be a trap and a snare. So it's not pleasant. It's not pleasant to hit that rock. It's not when you hit rock bottom, I was picturing it. It's just a lot of people present Jesus as this comfort. It's just so cozy. You just want to grab the blanket and cuddle with him. It's not always like that. Sometimes when we encounter Jesus, he's confronting us, right? It looks like a giant. It sounds like a giant is coming up the stairs. But it's just a 2-year-old. It's not a giant, ladies and gentlemen. A rock of offense, Romans 9:33. As it is written, see, I lay in Zion a stone that causes people to stumble, and a rock that makes them fall. And the one who believes in him will never be put to shame. If we believe in him, we will never be put to shame. He even took the shame upon himself, right? But to those who reject him, it will be a reason to stumble. So it is our choice, right? We can take him and we can take refuge on him, but to those who reject him and to those who didn't want to accept him, he was harsh. He confronted the hypocrites, the Pharisees. I mean, he hung out with the tax collectors and the prostitutes. I mean, he broke all the rules of what religion was supposed to be. He caused a lot of discomfort. He didn't come to make people feel warm and fuzzy. I call this one a part 2 because it was another verse that talked about the same thing. It says, a stone that causes people to stumble and a rock that makes them fall. They stumble because they disobey the message. So why will they stumble? Because they disobey, right? It's not like a high schooler just waiting for you to walk in and just making you stumble, right, on purpose. It will make you stumble when you disobey, when you reject to accept what he's telling you, right? And if you fall, I learned this from I remember I don't know if you met him. Did you ever met Roosevelt Hunter? He spoke a message that I never forgot. It said, if you fall, or when you fall, right? If you fall backward, you can die. But when you fall, make sure you fall forward. And I never forgot that message. That if you fall on him, fall on your knees, fall forward. It said, and anyone who falls on this stone will be broken to pieces. Anyone on whom it falls will be crushed. I think if I have a choice, right, here in the matter, the one I had a different translation. It says that we will be dust. Oh, here it says And he who falls on this stone will be broken to pieces. I take that. But whomever it falls, like if the stone falls on me, it will scatter him like dust. It's like, it's like the lesser of two. It's like if I get confronted by him and I'm broken into pieces, I'll take that other than him falling on me, right? And sometimes we have to go through that. Whatever in our life whatever it is that we're going through, sometimes we do need to be confronted of, hey, that really needs to change. There are things that he says to us that might be painful, right? That before I started the message, we were speaking about I surrender. There are things that we constantly have to surrender, right? And Isaiah 28:16 says, so this is what the sovereign Lord says. See, I lay a stone in Zion, tested, a tested stone, a precious cornerstone for a sure foundation. The one who relies on it will never be stricken with panic. And that really gets me because, anxiety and panic is what I struggle with, right? It said, we'll never be stricken with panic, and that's why I highlighted it. I liked it so much. It says, and drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank from the spiritual rock that accompanied them, and that rock was Christ. And that's the reason why Moses didn't make it, right? Because the rock was Christ. I just, I just see it as a prophecy, right? He was stricken for our transgressions, and the water still came, and the blessing still came. But he was the one who took the punishment, right? Even though Moses was told to speak to it, he was a prophecy. I remember before I got this message, I was like, God, help me. What do I do? I just, I'm going through this, and can you give me a word that will get me out of here? And all he kept saying was like, dig deep. If you were one of those that I was talking to going through this, go deeper, was what he would tell me. And I will keep praying and asking God. I'll wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and ask God, and every verse, everything that came in was go deeper. Every word that I got was go deeper. And I was like, God, if you tell me to go deeper one more time. And I wasn't getting it, right? That what he wanted me was this, was to go deeper with him. But it's like, am I not deep enough? Like, how much more do I have to go? And I feel like I'm still going through it, but now I get it, right? That to hit rock bottom is a good thing. So what do we do? Is Stephan, could you play that same I Surrender? And I just wanted to read these 3 verses. I've been going through Song of Solomon. And if somebody could read, help me, and they're all on Song of Solomon. Solomon 2:16. When he was telling me to go deeper, can somebody read 2:16 for me, if you have it?
My beloved is mine, and I am his.
Okay.
He eats his flock among the lilies.
So my beloved is mine, and I am his. It's just an acknowledgement that he is the one that's searching for me, right? He is mine, and I am his. And if you could If somebody could find 6-3. And my number one was like, we stop fighting him and just understand. It's like, God, I understand that I am yours. Whatever it is that I'm going through, I am yours. And number 2 was that we embrace the fact that we are his. That he is mine is number 1. And number 2, I am his. I am his property. Whatever decision I am making, whatever it is that I am doing. And just if we understood that he is mine and I am his, everything that we did, it came from that premise, I think we will make a lot of decisions, a lot of different decisions, right? It's like, I am him. I'm not allowed to do that. I am his. I'm not allowed to accept that friend on Facebook. I'm supposed to block him. I have like 3,000 friends on Facebook. And I started getting all these messages on Messenger. I was like, oh, I should have not accepted that one. Delete. Like, it's now you just kind of numb. But my husband just got his Facebook account, and I've been on Facebook for like 15 years now. You know, so it's like, oh, he just got on Facebook. Oh my God. So I was telling him, it's like, oh, you're gonna get all these things. You're gonna get people telling you things. Just like, beware. Just delete everybody. Block everybody. It's a lot of pressure, right? I feel like we're constantly rejecting thousands of things coming our way. Polk County Heroes. I mean, my website is called Polk County Heroes, for crying out loud. And it has a button there for messages. It's a constant reminder that you have to be, you're like, I am his. And keep walking. And something hits you. It's like, oh, I'm his. You are mine and I am yours. And so many different things. Like, we're bombarded constantly. TV, commercials. It's so much. Even the news, right? And we have to constantly remind ourselves. It's just God help me to keep walking the straight path, right? To walk like I am yours and you are mine. And if somebody can read 7:10.
I belong to my lover, and his desire is for me.
I just love that one because it's after all the pursuing, right? In Song of Solomon, it's like he's pursuing me and then I missed him. And then he came back and I know I'm his and he passed me by. I couldn't make it on time. It's a soap opera, right? And it comes to a point where you just una novela, yes. When you just give up, you're like, I am his, and I'm just gonna give up, right? I know he's coming back. I know he's gonna come and rescue me. He's gonna come and take me. But I just can't resist him anymore, right? It's just coming to that point of. And I tell him in my worship, it just sounds a little disrespectful, but it's like, you are irresistible, right? Just to come to him, like he is constantly the same way the enemy is just trying to lure us and take us. He is constant. If you search his presence, he is stronger, more persistent, and more irresistible than anything that is coming your way. He is bigger, deeper, stronger than anything that you're fighting against. If you just run to him and surrender and just say, just have it all. Whatever it is that is scaring me, just my future, my ministry, my job. I mean, we're going through so many situations, so many people being fired. And we're in such of unrest, right? So many things changing, funds, money being moved from different places. And we just get scared just thinking about what's going to happen in the future. If we could just hang on to him and be anchored on him. One of the things we were discussing on Thursday in the meeting, I just wanted to share a quote, if I can find it, by one of our members. If I can find it. No, I can't find it. My own journal. Okay, here. It says, God is worthy of not only our praise and love and heart, but also our pain, insecurities, fears, and failures. And sometimes I feel like we just say, okay, God, you're awesome, and we just worship you, and you deserve it all. But then we stop there, right? We're like, can I have all these worries? I have all these concerns. I don't know what's gonna happen over the summer. I don't know what's gonna happen with my job. And we just don't surrender that too, right? So when George said this last week, I just wrote it down. It's like, oh, I've been doing half of it. I've been worshiping, I've been praying, coming to him, and then I grabbed all my junk and take it with me again. And that's why I'm struggling. It says, God is worthy of not only our praise and love and hearts, but also our pain, insecurities, fears, and failures. And that's what I wanted to end with. It says, just surrender all, right? He wants your praise. He wants all the good stuff. Yes, he wants your heart. He wants your love. He wants your devotion. He also wants your junk. Yeah. He wants your fears. He wants you to come to him and say, God, I'm insecure about even you. I don't know what's going on. I'm freaking out. If it's sadness, whatever it is, just bring it to him. And this time I just wanted to, if we could sing I Surrender again. And I love it that James, when he was doing the Lord's Supper, he brought it back. I was like, oh, he's speaking my message. About surrendering to him. And I just wanted to repeat it again and end with this, that if you wanted prayer, if you wanted to ask somebody to pray with you, just let us know. If not, right there where you are, just if you could just take a moment and say, God, I've been doing half of it, or I've been doing complaining to others about all my struggles and the things that I'm going through, but not telling you what I'm supposed to tell you, not digging deep enough and coming and bringing you the junk, right? just one more thing I wanted to finish. It says, I don't know all the details of all the different storms that you have been going through, but I know one thing. He's calling us to be wise and not to be foolish. To not be shallow, lazy, selfish, and dig deep. Dig deep in spite of your struggles. Dig deep in the middle of your depression. Dig deep in the middle of your storm and insecurities. 10 feet deep as you have to, until you find him, because he is the rock.